We have a quorum? Okay, so the recording is on. So I'll go through the preliminaries and welcome everybody to the meeting. So I'm Peter Halley. I'm the current chair of the Advisory Commission of Non-Voting Taxpayers. Let me just confirm who is present and we'll go through the little spiel here. So Peter Halley's here, Peter Kahn is here, Kathy Baird is here, Gary Biller is here, Bill now. I think Bill Garden is across from joining. Bill Sherman is on. I don't believe Lou Bisano is here, and Don Green is on. If I left anybody off who was a new member who has been sworn in and I've not mentioned.
I'm getting some feedback. Is everybody hearing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So did everything I say just everybody hear it or?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So our speaker today is going to be Stephen Arsenault, who is the Director of Public Works here on Nantucket, and we'll get to him in a second. So this is an open meeting conducted remotely, consistent with the governor's executive order and extensions thereof due initially to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The governor's order is posted with agenda materials from the past for this meeting, and it allows public bodies such as ours to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow through with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. We're convening by video conference via the Zoom app. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body and are available on the town's website unless otherwise noticed, and that for this meeting it is the agenda. We are now going to look at the basic ground rules, which I think you are all familiar with, but we are going to turn to the first item on the agenda. I will, during the course of the meeting, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, voice any questions, or anything else that they believe is appropriate. Please hold until your name is called. You're always welcome to raise your hand and I'll recognize. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response to questions, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If you wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself. And then after all the members have spoken, I will invite public comment for non-members who are in attendance at this meeting. In addition, for non-members, I ask you, first of all, I welcome you to the meeting. And secondly, I ask that anyone who does not have a name up on their the screen associated with their participation, please put your name on your screen so we can know who you are. So with that said, let's start the meeting. I thought that what we would do is first approve the agenda for today's meeting and then approve the minutes from the past meeting. Do I have a
Also
motion?
move.
We have motion second. Do we have a second?
Don Green.
You're probably on mute. Mute.
I
Excuse
second.
me. Second, good. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Raise your
Aye.
right hand. Okay, anybody opposed? No. Okay, so the agenda has passed, and we will follow that agenda. The minutes from the past meeting have been posted. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the past meeting? Anybody? Motion, please.
Also move.
So moved.
Okay, and a seconder?
Second.
Yeah, second. It's been moved and seconded that these minutes have be approved. Everybody in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Okay, so let's get in. Our first item on the agenda is to welcome our guest speaker, Stephen Arsenault, who's the Director of Public Works here on Nantucket. I took a couple of moments this morning to take a look at who is Stephen Arsenault. He has spoken to us in the past, and I think right as he ascended either to acting director or to, I think it's when you were acting director, you were or assistant director possibly, you were sort of shoved in at the last minute to speak to us, and we appreciated that. I'm not going to go, he has a resume a mile long, and I will note that he has done so many things for the country and for the town of Nantucket, for others during a really long history of public service. I think starting in the Corps of Engineers in the United States Army, served in Iraq, as I understand, served momentarily perhaps in East Timor, and then had some softer duty in Hawaii before leaving the Corps, and I think doing some other jobs and eventually finding his way to Nantucket. And I think, Stephen, you've been here for about 4 years now. Is that right?
Yeah, 4 years.
And so you are probably painfully aware of the challenges of the DPW's assignment in Nantucket. So what I asked Steve is whether he would sort of tell us what his big challenges are, what the issues are that we as non-voting taxpayers should be aware of and thinking about, and how we can provide some support. And I think amongst those issues are, things like groundwater issues are all over the place nowadays, and what have you. So, Stephen, if you would
Thank
let
you.
us know what you're thinking.
Yes, thank you for having me. I apologize for the confusion for my last invitation. I very much apologize for that, for not attending. Things have been a bit, you would think that with me being deputy and then becoming interim, then becoming director, that things would fall in line, and that the amount of information and the organization of it would build and become more organized and more structured as time goes on, and it has not. I'm learning what I don't know almost on a very regular basis, and part of that is not having proper channels of communication, and some of that is a great deal of it is the DPW's responsibility and my responsibility. So I just want to state before we go further that I do want to have a clear line of communication with ACNTV. And as with other organizations, because we need to hear what the community is asking for as a whole. And I think that we get drowned. I think your voices get drowned out sometimes with some louder ones, more singular issues. And that's not how I'd like to do business. I want to take care of the island as a whole and and have everyone participate as part of the solution. Some of the issues that we still have some of the same issues that Mr. McNeil had, that Kara had. Our human resources, not the department, but just people in general. We're having difficulty bringing people into the Public Works Department. I have some solutions that I suggested to Libby, and she seems to be on board with it, but I have to put together a plan to do that. I'd like to have an academy approach to the DPW, where we bring younger people in who are not college minded, but who want to be productive, and possibly train them, provide training for them in the blue collar positions, landscaping, roads, construction, arboreal services, even mechanical services. Electrical and plumbing is what that's shooting for the moon, but that's what I would love to have. And then have some degree of obligation to the town for a period of time. And there will be attrition. They're not going to, most will not want to stay with the town, but some will, because they want the stability or they love the island that much. And I think that, and once I put all that on paper, I think that it'll be clear as to why I think it works. I've experienced this in the military, which is not so different from any other organization except for the size of it and the resources. And I was a mechanic in the Army when I first joined, and I was in the National Guard in '91, which I didn't use my time wisely there. In '97, I joined the regular Army, and I was a mechanic. My sergeant thought I was too smart to work for him, so he gave me some options, and I took this basic math and science test, and I passed it, and I was accepted into the Prime Power Production School. And for a year, I was paid to go to school to learn physics, thermodynamics. And I already had a background in engineering from college, but it was great. I was actually certified to be a third-class operator at a nuclear plant. So anything from the wall socket to the plant, I was trained in, educated in, and we actually had application to. And that always stuck in the back of my mind about how good that was for me and how that changed my mentality and my way of approaching education for someone who had difficulty with it throughout his life. I didn't care for structured traditional school, but I loved that approach. And I did not realize it was the same approach many blue collar institutions have. And I think that we can implement that with the town, and that'll at least keep us with some degree of skilled labor. And as these young people come in with these skills can be trained and experienced by their coworkers and by the partners, because you can't do it alone. And maybe we can help create some stability in services to the town, so that we're not telling the community, well, we don't have a plumber, we don't have an electrician, we don't have the right person for this or that. I'd like to create more stability in our day-to-day services. And that's my pie in the sky dream for that. We do appreciate that the community has been very supportive of us, but as I just stated, my focus is on the day-to-day operations. We have a number of large projects coming. We want to do a complete redo of Pleasant Street from door to door, meaning the street itself, the sidewalk, and the curbing, from the whole way. We have several strategic locations, stormwater wise, that we have to address immediately. We've had people being drowned out since probably as far back as 2010. who've asked for assistance. Unfortunately, some of their more active neighbors, they're developing their fellow neighbors out of their neighborhood, increasing the stability and the longevity of your own property. No one can take that right away from you. But it is affecting neighbors, where people are increasing their elevations up to 40 feet before they even build the house. But the neighbors down the street, who are already at a difference of 30 feet, were already having flooding issues, and now having catastrophic flooding issues. And they're asking the town for assistance. And some developers have been part of the solution. Some we haven't been reachable or haven't been reached. So it's not fair to say that they're purposely doing this or don't care. But that's an issue that we're having on the island that we're trying to fix. Another thing is interdepartment communication and collaboration. We are, with Mark Willett, David Gray, Libby, of course, is facilitating a great deal of this. But and even with Roberto Santa Maria and Jeff Carlson, we haven't had the collaboration that the town deserves, because we've had this confederacy, so to speak, where we've acted individually and tell everybody else, hey, look, this is what I'm doing, fall in line. We're trying to move away from that mentality and for the last few years we have moved away from that, but we're trying to go further into deeper collaboration, spending more time at the table with discussions and planning, and with timeline and scope of work before we actually get active with the work. And so we've improved with that. But another piece of that puzzle that's missing is, again, organizations such as yourself and others who need to have a seat at the table and have their say before we begin a project. And I'm sorry, I can go on forever. I better pause. Let's see if you have any questions or any of your other concerns. There's so much that I could cover.
Yeah, I have an observation, which I sort of, you brought this issue of basically development not taking into account elevations that then contribute to, the water's coming down and it's got to go someplace.
Yes.
And what happens is that development could be as small as a single house or a garage or whatever. And if the elevation is changed, that's going to affect where water flows. And I know we've had this issue on our street, and I think you're aware of that. But it strikes me that there is a process in the town, and I'm not sure that process is being followed carefully, and that is in the approval of the plans for construction. There is a town ordinance or bylaw, whatever you would call it, that requires a permitting authority to look at this issue and to take it into account before approving the permit. And it's not clear who in general, this is, and it's like 139-23 or something like that. Different agencies may have that ball, but it's not clear that they understand that they have it and they're running with it. We've seen, development where grades are changed dramatically, and water ends up on a public way and creates, unsafe situations. And everybody's sort of looking around, pointing the finger in different directions. So I think it's in the planning phase.
Yes.
That You
And-
have
and-
to fess up and say the elevation is going to change and how it's going to change. And then somebody can say, well, is that appropriate?
Yes, and please believe me, I'm not. I don't mean to place the blame on the developer, because now that I think about what I've said, I realize that it could be accusatory, but I don't mean it in that way. What I mean is that with Plus, their current regulations and guidelines allow for a lot of latitude for developers. They are relooking at a few things. But I can't pretend to speak for them. But I have talked to Andrew and said that I would like to explore this further, as well as Libby has tasked myself, Jeff Carlson, Roberto, and Water and Sewer, and said, look, you guys need to flesh out our stormwater policy. And if we need to put that into town bylaw, fine, but we need to do our homework first before we do anything else. And she's absolutely right. If you see the stormwater bylaws from other towns, quite extensive, and ours is kind of thin. So we need to build it up. So most of that responsibility is on us. We're not providing enough restrictions or explanation as to what needs to happen before development even begins.
Yeah. From looking at the bylaws, and I'm not a Massachusetts lawyer, so I'm never sure that I'm interpreting things correctly. But I think there is a bylaw that pretty well it's not very detailed, but it provides, who has the responsibility. And I think in general, it ends up with the HDC. And I'm not sure that they are, really taking that to heart in their approvals. And the responsibility lies on the developer too.
Yeah, and they only have so much. They only have so much power. Our ability to enforce on island is not what I would like it to be. First of all, we don't have the manpower for enforcement. Secondly, we don't have the culture here for enforcement. We are on an island of vice presidents, chairmen, well-established professionals who are successful in their jobs because they know how to work the systems that they were a part of. And they're not going to just keel over because we say something. We have to be able to have well-established, we need the rules to be spelled out, I think, in greater detail. Some people have, in goodwill, made efforts to improve the neighborhood situation. We may disagree as to, there's certain communities, I don't think I should name them, just I would like to give the person credit, but it may backfire. So there is someone who's done a great deal of development in his area, and then realized what he was doing, and then made offers to DPW to assist us in improving the stormwater situation. So there are people who are very well intentioned, but there's some people who are not attached to their development. This is a seasonal place, and they have their contractors saying, yes, anything that you want done, we can do. And they're just doing it. And the owners may not be aware of the impact it's having.
Well, why don't we go through everybody, and if you have questions or observations for the director, let's hear them. Who would like to go first?
Peter, Bill Gardner?
Hello, Bill.
Yeah. Stephen, Bill Gardner, live in Quidnet, longtime summer resident. Thank you very much for your service to the town. You're doing a great job. I wonder, given the housing shortage on the island and the difficulty in hiring people, what is your authorized number of employees at DPW, and how many do you have today?
I should know that, but we've done some new hires, and I don't offhand, let me see. We have approximately 29 personnel. And we're top heavy, so we have 10 personnel in office as staff, and the remainder are technicians and laborers. We have 4 in our maintenance shop. We just newly, no, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 3 in our maintenance shop, newly hired. And our operations team, at any given day, because of personal situations, leave, absences, stuff like that, we have about 7 to 8 people here, and our facilities team, 3 people at any given time. And our take it or leave it personnel are 3. So it's the numbers may not seem to add up, but because of some of the personal situations, individual work considerations, we have about 29 people, but at any given time is actually much less on task.
Thank you.
I guess to follow up on Bill, are you still looking for more people?
Oh, yes.
and What
Yes, sir.
areas? Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave it that pause. I was thinking. So my ideal is for every service that we have to have 3 to 4 people. That would add another 30 people to the team. Of course, I don't believe we'll ever get to those numbers. So what we're trying to do is we've divested power from the director, the deputy director, and the managers to the foreman. And so I'm bringing about a more traditional structure, so that I have 3 foremen on the operations side, 1 for facilities and 1 for maintenance. And so I'm delegating a lot of the day-to-day, monthly, up to 30-day power to them as far as scheduling. It's helping a great deal with our efficiency and how quickly we finish projects. Whereas in the past, everything was pretty much up at the director level and dictated on a daily basis. And that's just incredibly inefficient and disruptive. Because in the past, when I first got here in 2018, if we had everyone working Matticat Road and someone demanded that we address a beach situation, I'd lose more than half the team and a good number of hours to re-outfit and redo to get the proper equipment. And so it would look like we were working inefficiently on Matticat, where this other job away at a beach was being taken care of, but it's not in public view. So it didn't give us a good look. But we're now consistently working at a location to completion and then moving on to the next project. And I think is better. It gives people a better feeling, and it gives our team a better feel as well. They feel like they're accomplishing something, and they're more willing to do overtime if they know if they stick just another 2 hours, they can complete the job. They're more willing to do that. See what else. The mechanic positions that we have, our fleet manager is Mr. David LaFleur, who is a master mechanic. But our new hires are hired based off of their potential and their experience. They have mechanical experience, mechanical knowledge, understanding of systems, but they're not school trained. Holding a school trained certified mechanic has been near impossible. We've had 2 in the past. We fought and held on to them for certain periods of time, but we cannot compete with the private sector. The most we can possibly promise a mechanic, right in our current structure, is maybe $35 an hour, ideally, but realistically $30 an hour. And so the private companies on island hear about this and make offers in the 40s and 50s an hour. We can't compete with that. I can't even, when other departments who have people who are being underpaid as well are demanding higher pay, I can't make that offer or even make the argument right now. But I am looking at possibly developing specialist positions and making mechanic, because I was looking at electrical and plumbing and thinking about adding a mechanic to that, a specialty position where we actually hire somebody, almost like an in-person contractor, who is going to dedicate a certain period of time to the town with their expertise, with the assistance of our workers. That I think that's the best I can do. The electricians and plumbers we have who work with us love the town and love to assist us, but they have so much work. They can't possibly even, their plate's always full. There is no scarcity for them. There's nothing but abundance for them. So it's very difficult.
So it seems like you're part of an island-wide problem, finding people.
But we're looking at alternatives to. I'm of the mind that I don't believe the island's going to change drastically anytime. So at any time, so I think we need to change our processes that reflect how the island is. Instead of wishing for a change in the future, we need to work with our culture and how the island works.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, Peter.
Yeah.
Peter Kahn.
Yep. Hi, Peter.
Hello, sir.
Okay. Mr. Arsenault, thanks very much for joining us today and joining the others, and commending you for being doing a very good job in a very difficult position and time. I have two questions, one sort of macro and one a bit more micro. The macro, I mean, aside from emergencies, which obviously you'll deal with as they come, how does the department prioritize its work? Because there obviously are many demands upon you. I'm just curious about that first.
Honestly, we don't have a streamlined prioritization. We're working towards that now that I've got. I want to preamble this without sounding like I am making an excuse, but it's an honest excuse. With the type of transition we had kind of had our head chopped off, so I had to rebuild our head. We lost the director and the administrative team immediately. Well, the head and the heart, I'll put it that way. Admin is the heart of the whole thing, the whole process. So we've been rebuilding. We've rebuilt that. We're rebuilding our team and changing how we communicate and how we do business. And some of that required some time, buy-in, and training, and just time. So with that, getting them to understand, getting the team to understand why prioritization and creating synchronization matrices and putting things on the calendar, why it was important, that took some time to get buy-in all the way down to the foreman. They're understanding it now. And now that they have a seat at the table and can tell us about how it affects them as far as their aspects, we are working towards creating a hard copy, but it's going to be a living document, but hard copy prioritized list for roads, sidewalks, and other services for landscaping and such, so that the town can see how we prioritize things. And as as situations change, we can change those lists based on the need. But right now, we don't have a process to a quantitative process to prioritize things. Right now, it's based on visual need, demand from the town, and working equipment. For right now, like brush cutting is a high priority to my crew. They want to get brush cutting done. They're very upset that they're getting a lot of flack from it. But two of our major assets for brush cutting are broken, and with the vehicle and equipment industry being crippled by COVID and now they're behind, we're having a hard time getting parts and repairs. So we had to refocus them based on that. So right now we're kind of going with things. we're developing a system, but we don't, I can't say that we have an established printable prioritization system that, that you would be able to see and accept. Right now, we're going off of a lot of our expertise, demand, and what's available equipment wise.
Well, you mentioned that's just a micro follow-up, which is, you mentioned that obviously one of your important roles is to, is what you, I guess what you refer to as the landscaping and the cutting. I mean, obviously, as you ride the bike paths, you see that there are areas that are very, that are overgrown and they get cut. And then the question is, when do they get cut again? Do you have to call the town to get it done, or is it, I mean, are your people on as I say, on a regular rotation to do the cutting? So we know
No.
every 2 months or something it'll happen.
No, that's what it should be. That's not what we're doing. We should have a regular rotation. Absolutely. The problem is, and now the foremen have access to me, so they tell me their point of view on it. Without those two particular assets, we have this Raptor sickle type cutting device, and another device that can that has an arm that mows. With those two devices having issues, it increases their amount of time on site by days, because now they're using handheld items, and that are not proper for that activity. So the chains get busted. They have to take time to readjust it, to fix it back up again, and so we lose manpower. We lose about 4 to 6 people for a much longer period of time when we do those things. So the way we triage it is, if we have potholes to do, we'll spend an entire day or even a certain period of time doing potholes until we get to an acceptable level. And then we'll put all of our efforts into a particular bike path or section. And so it's basically just been putting all out efforts to one thing or another. Brush cutting is number one, but we have to pause it once we complete a certain stretch to address something else that we've left undone for a period of time.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, I left out the most important piece, and it does get overlooked, is trash. Trash right now, we have 3 to 4 people operating daily, and that's actually our number one priority. If everything was to break down, I was to lose my entire crew, I would be out there doing trash. That is number one priority. It is incredible how much we produce, especially during the summertime. So I can't, that's the one thing that will not stop. That is every single day.
Okay, thank you.
Gary?
Yes, so Steve, thank you for joining us again. I have a couple of questions. With respect to the trash, when I listen to the select board, they comment from time to time, especially Matt Fee is concerned about, since he's on the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, as am I, he's concerned about eventually having to find a new place to put the trash for the entire island. So what is your view of the current lifespan of the existing facility, A, and B, is there any thought about where that might go? I think they were talking about some areas of possibility up towards the airport, but
Oh, wow.
the first question is, how long do you think we have before we really have to face that question for the whole island?
Well, it's based right now. I'm basing it off of Coastal Resiliency's projections.
Right.
There is a period of time, and I might be off by some years, but I believe it's between like 70 to 100 years. DPW's current location will be begin to get saturated, if not overwhelmed with water. The waste options, fortunately, is the highest location in that area. It's not, based on their projections, it's not going to be overwhelmed. However, it will be cut off. So we're doing research with Weston and Sampson and some other engineering firms currently to how to address our current situation and how to do waste reduction. But we're also in talks as far as how, what do we do with this material? And we have some differing opinions. Some people are asking us to look at incineration, which is not legal according to the state of Massachusetts. But there are other things that are called incineration that are not incineration, such as gasification, and possibly, some people are asking us, well, maybe we can start removing the material from the island and setting it somewhere else. So we're still debating. I think some people think we're further along than others, but it depends on, whose side you're on, whether you believe in reducing and keeping it in place or in stabilizing it or whatever. But the companies that we're working with now, they have done this corrective measure on a few locations in Massachusetts and on another island, is what I've been advised. So I honestly, it's a lot of information to process. So we're going to have to do a number of presentations to the town to explain what the approach is going to be. But we're not just there yet. Also, we have an upcoming decision to make in fiscal year 25. Our contract is up for discussion with Waste Options. And we have options as far as ownership of the facility, of the land, who does what, and how we operate. So we're deep into thought there, and we're discussing there, trying to make the best decision for the town. And scientifically, as far as our environment. And we also have some fiscal matters to discuss about it as well. So you'll be hearing a great deal about it very soon.
Thank you. I have another question on a completely different subject. At the select board meeting a couple of nights ago, David Gray mentioned something that I'm aware of because I'm a Brand Point resident, and that is that David Gray mentioned that there were a considerable number of complaints from the folks on Easton Street, and they all assumed that the odors that they were complaining about were the result of problems runoff from the sewer system. But David said, very interestingly, I wonder if you can elaborate on it. He said they looked into it and it has nothing to do with the sewer system. But in fact, he said, it's a strange situation with seaweed. Do you know anything about what he's talking about? That the seaweed is causing this blockage and is also causing the odors to come from the deteriorating seaweed that seems to be lodging down probably where the runoffs are at the end of Easton. Do you know anything about that?
No, when I was in a meeting, that was the first time I've heard it as well. So, and I interpreted it differently. I didn't, but yes, I think that you bring up a good point. I'll get with David to see if he was referring to this being lodged into the stormwater system. I was thinking about the wetland there and the beach, but you know what? I completely it went over my head as far as it could possibly being in the stormwater system, but it is a chance that it could, seeing as how through Children's Beach, that area, the pipes and the all the devices are always full of there's always a back and forth. It's never completely empty. So it could be a part of it. I'll look into that. And if we show that is the case, then I'll have the team go out there and start cleaning out those areas. And if it's not, maybe we should do it just in case as a precaution. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it. Thank you for that. I didn't take it that way.
Anybody else? You speak up because I can only see about 5 or 6 people at a time. And now I've lost my my cursor. Sounds like nobody's spoken up, so I think it's time to say thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to your continued success in the job. And I guess I do have just one question. What is the time frame for the Pleasant Street reconstruction? And has the money been approved by the voters?
That's, let me see, wait, Pleasant, let me look that up real quick. I believe that my head's in a quagmire with the finances right now.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah, Pleasant Streets are, part of it has already been approved. I don't know if we got everything that we need for it. There was a Pleasant Street sidewalk article that was approved some time ago. And so this will be married up with it because we want to do door to door. We want to go all the way, the entire legal right of way, because it's, believe it or not, the roads have an ecosystem themselves. And with all that done together, it'll stabilize it for 20 years, hopefully. That's what we're looking for. But if what I'm asking of each of the organizations, if it's okay to communicate with me as a whole through the organization, that way you can keep me honest and I can keep on track with it. And I'll be able to give you that information. I just have to get clarification.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. And go enjoy the rest of the weekend.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Right. Bye-bye. So I think the last thing on our, well, we have two more things on the agenda, our discussion of ACNVT representation on the short-term rental working group. And then just a brief discussion of who's up next for our guests. So on the short-term working group, Kathy, I think you followed the meetings of the working group, and maybe you can tell us what how many people we need to appoint. My understanding is at least two, a primary and an alternate, to participate in the work of the committee. And I'm not sure I understand the third person, if there is a third person.
Sure, yeah, I spoke with Denise earlier today just to confirm what I heard on the meetings. So there's basically a timeline. We have to submit 3 names. We can suggest primary, alternate, and so forth, but my understanding from what she said is that they will be looking at all of the different names that are submitted and try to balance the whole working group as best they can. So they might pick a different primary person from our list of 3 people than we would, but she also said they would come back to us after we submit our names and say, we want this person. And we could say, well, gee, we'd rather this person, and they would consider that. So that's basically how they plan to have it work. The 3 people who we submit would need to fill out the paperwork, which I'd circulated to the members earlier. It's a typical application, just like we applied to be on this board. You fill out the same information. They're using the standard form for that. And then they're going to ask some additional questions, which I can share the screen and you can look at them if you want to, but these questions are being vetted by town council before they're asked. So the at-large people, as well as ACNO, Nantucket Together, and ACNVT, those names that are submitted will also need to fill out the paperwork, and it'll be due in by August 26th. So the town is required to announce the openings of this group, just like any other committee. And they started that, they have to do that in 2 different issues of the Inky Mirror. So they've already done the first one this past week, and I think they'll do the next one next week. The deadline for submitting, I think, as I already said, is August 26th. Then once they get all of the names and all the applications, they will be put in the select board meeting packets in September. And so those will be announced so people can see who has applied and what their backgrounds are. And then on the 21st of September is when they will have the decision process, so that the selection of the people and the people who have applied will be permitted to speak on their behalf at the select board meeting on the 21st. And then I believe the group will commence their work after that. So that's my understanding of what the process is and how it's going to take place.
Okay, yeah, I've got the timeline, which was in the select board packet. And I think you sent it out around, or I got it out of the packet. According to that timeline, there's a list of the membership of STR working group, and it says advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers member, a primary and alternative, and then it says these are voting. It will be a voting position, and I guess what is do we know what the commitment will be of whoever becomes the primary person or the alternative or anybody who's going to participate? These will be Zoom meetings that are being held, or how will the participation happen? And is there any indication what the timeline is? Because I know they want to have this finished before the annual town meeting.
Right. So that's going to be tricky to get anything forwarded through like any kind of bylaw or zoning article, because they can be submitted. And I just learned this today at the Civic League meeting, between September 29th, and then they have to be, you could start submitting any kind of a warrant article, and November 13th. That's the time frame. So how much can be done when they don't even start until the end of September is going to be a challenge, I think. But as far as the commitment goes, that was in the framework, which I believe I sent out as well. And I think you have to be willing to attend, I'll read it, attending 95% of the scheduled meetings, they will be Zoom, and attending 100% of meetings where the critical votes are taken. So in other words, where the substance of a zoning article for annual town meeting. Missing more than 2 meetings will be grounds for dismissal from the working group, and the alternate will be appointed. Commitment also includes reaching 100% consensus on the data needed and the data definitions and the sources of all data. Reaching 80% consensus, that's 7 out of 9 votes on any topic that is brought to a vote. So it's a pretty fair, decent commitment requirement. I think it's much more stringent than any other group that we know about.
Yeah. And then I guess the other issue is, if we have a primary and we have an alternate, is that 95 and 100%? Does that mean one of those 2 individuals needs to be present at 100% of the meetings, or does it mean that whoever our primary member is has to be? In other words, can the primary and alternate with their membership? I know you probably don't know the answer to that, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would have to assume that you have to allow for that. It's just not going to be possible for anybody to do that. Things come up, and so I would assume that you can do that. I think what they're saying is if there's no member there, primary, they're going to boot you out and put the alternate in, because it's a very big commitment. So.
Well, these are all things that we have to find out, but our next meeting, it's going to require some people to put in their paperwork, people who are willing to do this. And so I guess the first issue is who is willing to be amongst the 3 names that we submit to be, and we'll assume for the time being that the select board will tell us whoever we submit, who's going to be the primary and who's going to be the alternative, and who's going to be left out. And because that seems to be the way the process is set up. And I mean, I can check further on this, but I've not done so yet.
Peter,
yeah.
My comment, which I decided not to attend the working group meetings.
Hmm.
I thought it's foolish of this working group committee to think that they should decide who should be representing these organizations. And as you recall, when we met with, when Libby Gibson met with us our last meeting, I told her clearly, it's really silly for the working group to think they're going to decide. When you think about ACT now, it's either Tobias Glidden or Julia. And at the end of the day, Peter McCausland is going to make the decisions anyway. So it's just ridiculous for the working group committee to think that they should. And it sounded to me from what Denise said to Kathy that maybe they understand that these organizations, whoever acts for the organizations, will be speaking for the organizations. It's not as if they're talking personally about their own proclivities or desires. It's what the organization says. So I don't think it really makes any sense for the working group to figure out, who should be the primary, the secondary. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that in listening to the select board talk about this, either last meeting or it was probably the meeting before, Libby Gibson was of the opinion that it was very unlikely because of the controversy and the seriousness of the positions that at least initially people have. She says it's very unlikely that they will have an article ready to go for the next annual meeting. You're going to have to set up the group. They're going to have to start meetings. And the first few meetings, they're going to waste a lot of time talking about data, which is, who has the right information about whether it's affecting our housing and who has the data about how many rentals there are, et cetera, et cetera. So Libby realistically suggested by the time they get through those several initial stages, which will take many of the early meetings, it's really not likely that they'll have articles that are agreed to by all of the people who they are hoping. They're talking about getting not 100%, but close to 100% of buy-in by all of the 11 voting groups. And my own view is it's probably going to be very hard to get that done. So whoever is on the, doing that is going to probably be doing that for quite some time. And they haven't told us whether they're going to meet once a week, once a month, or however. So, but the questionnaire that people have to fill out does require you to say you're willing to be there at 100% of the meetings, et cetera. So.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, Gary,
Yeah.
so that we could have some potential understanding of what the commitment is, because it sounds like it's going to be a fairly rigorous commitment. But I think as long as these meetings are virtual, that should be able to be scheduled by a group like ours. It's not
Right.
going to be here over the winter time. So that being said, I think what I would suggest is we do two things. Number one, we figure out 3 names to go in, and we also figure out who we recommend the primary and the alternate be. And I guess by default, the third name is the third name because we're supposed to submit 3. Number one. Number two, I think at a future meeting, and the question is when the appropriate timing is for that meeting, we ought to have a further discussion of what positions we think our designee, whoever is selected, should be taking at these meetings. As I understand it, and I'd like to see if other people agree with my understanding, our current position is, by and large, that there should be one rule that applies both to non-voting taxpayers and to taxpayers. And that's about it. That those two groups should be subject to the same set of rules, and that we don't really go far beyond that and as to what we support or don't support. Does anybody have any different view of what our current policy?
No, that's always been our position that, we don't have a real dog in that fight, but we just don't want the non-voting taxpayers to be discriminated against.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
the
we took
problem with
position on,
the problem with Act Now's proposal was clearly discriminatory against the non-voting taxpayers, besides being illegal, but which is why, it didn't fly. But our main position was that we want to be treated equally, whether it's a voting taxpayer or a non-voting taxpayer. The same rules should apply with respect to short-term rentals.
Yeah.
right, so we have taken a position on specific articles, but that's water under the bridge because those articles are all
right.
gone.
That's right. I think that's absolutely right. It's
That's right.
and so this is kind of a clean slate situation, recognizing that Article 39 passed, and so there is some regulatory authority and some data gathering authority, but not much more, other than whatever the general laws of the state of Massachusetts are with respect to what one can do with private property.
Right.
One other thing to be absolutely clear on, I just want to make sure that we're all clear on, is I understand that the ACNVT seat at the table is to be held by someone who is appointed to the ACNVT, not from non-voting taxpayers generally. Is that your understanding as well? So that we're talking about picking somebody from the membership of the ACNVT that's been appointed.
As a member.
Right.
The definition says member.
Okay, I just want that needs to be, make sure that, because my sense is that some people think otherwise, they may think otherwise.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. My understanding is the same as Gary's, because the document I have in front of me says membership of STR working, and it says advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers member.
Right.
And
the same thing with Act Now. And
Yeah.
I'm sure the same thing with Nantucket Together.
So, we will figure out how to make clear our desires in meaning primary and alternate, and make that very clear so that when the select board makes its choices, they understand what our preference is.
Right.
I think that's about as the best we can do on that.
Okay, but I also think, by the way, it should be clear. I mean, it should be clear. We should just, the record should reflect that we anticipate that there will be future meetings of the ACNVT in which we will be discussing what is before this committee, this special committee, so that we will be, and that is open to the public, and we'll be taking guidance from that. Okay, so it's not just a few of us who are sitting around making these decisions. I think the public needs to understand.
That's right. That's why I brought up this sort of two-step approach. We need a member appointee, and we also need, at some point in the future, as the issues develop, and we will probably have meetings during the winter, given the schedule that has been proposed, that will specifically be held, public meetings, to provide sort of information for our member appointee to use for his or her participation in the working group. That's the way I would put it. And so this is an iterative process where, in a sense, we and the public, through the facility of our meeting, we'll at least be able to have input into what our one unit on this committee will be voting for and perhaps proposing.
Peter, when is our next meeting of our committee here?
It's, let's see, I think it's
20th.
the 20th, August 20th. Yeah, so
Right.
it
So
seems
is
to me
that the time that we should decide
Yep.
who it is that has to fill out those applications?
Yeah, I would agree
We'll
with
still
Gary.
have 6 days.
Yeah, I agree with Gary. We shouldn't, I wouldn't necessarily rush it through right now. I think it would be helpful to find a little bit more information as you raised the
Yeah,
question as to
They
what
they
time
may
limit we
tell
were
us.
talking about, how the voting, how, are we going to be able to have a principal and a deputy, so to speak, cover the whole thing? And we still have, it gives us a week to submit the names with the app.
I
And
think
how
that's a good
often the
idea.
committee's going to meet. Yep.
Yeah, may I suggest that whoever is interested in doing this might want to, before that next meeting, secure the application
Sure.
and start filling it out so that they're not against a crazy deadline. Because that's a Saturday, which means Saturday, Sunday, so they'll only have, what, 4 days left to?
26, it's 26, isn't it?
Yes.
26,
26.
so it's 6 days.
But that's only 4 working days.
Well, I don't know about you. I don't know about you, Peter, but I think most of us are quote unquote working 7 days a week around here.
I forgot, Peter, that you're in private practice. Well, good. So I think that's that's good. So I think we have agreement that we'll address the membership at the next meeting, or the designee at the next meeting. Is it appropriate? I think it's also probably appropriate for people who are interested in doing that they let us know before the next meeting. Is that so that we, I mean, you can pop up at the next meeting and tell us. I will say this, I think that we have enough people who are qualified to do this that I think at the last meeting I indicated my interest. I'm interested, but I am not. I'm happy for somebody else to be, some other people to be both the primary and the alternate members of this working group. So. I'm not taking my name out. I'm just saying that I don't feel like it's necessary for the chair to be on that committee. Okay. So that leaves us with future meetings, and I believe that I have signed up for the next meeting, the new traffic planner. As you know, we invited him to come preferably for the next meeting. He then said, well, I have to get Andrew Vorse's approval. Andrew, because his job is in the planning department. And Andrew said, sure, he is welcome to go to this meeting and address you, but understand that he's brand new in the job and he's still learning the ropes and learning all this. So I think it's probably a very good time for us to meet with him, because we can give him our list of what we think he should be focusing on in terms of traffic problems that we all experience on a regular basis. So.
Peter, we have a couple people from the public who I think want to speak. I just want to make sure you see them. Okay.
Okay.
The appropriate time.
Yeah, I'm not. So I see John has his hand up. John?
Yeah, I do. I have my hand up actually to, I'll yield my time though to Francie Neely.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Hi.
I sure can.
Hi, everybody. So I appreciate the question. And I guess it was you, Peter, asking about what's our current position about the short-term rental issue. It's a very, very crucial question for the island and for non-voting taxpayers. And I would like, again, respectfully to ask you, please, to poll or survey non-voting taxpayers to determine what the position should be. We sent you what clearly the Monomoy position is. It's resoundingly that there should be no purely commercial short-term rentals at all in purely residential neighborhoods. That was said loud and clear to us in a survey that we conducted in our neighborhood, which I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, we had a huge response rate to the survey.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember the exact number, Francie, but it was higher than you would normally expect from a study like that.
Exactly. And in fact, today at the Nantucket Civic League meeting, someone was talking about a survey they had conducted in their area where they said it was a fantastic response rate, which was 29%. And I think ours was like 67%.
It was, yeah.
So I would say this is real data. This is facts we have given you. Data and facts are what should be informing the view of the representative of the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers or of non-voting taxpayers, not just what the person or persons who happens to be sitting in that room thinks on that particular day. And with all due respect, and y'all, I compliment you all for giving of your time, on a volunteer basis. I can tell you spend a lot of time, and I do too, in a different way. And I appreciate that because it shows what you care about Nantucket. But I think it is really important that you collect data to inform the opinions of your representative. There has been too much. I couldn't agree more with someone, I think, who is suggesting that the data is jumbled right now. And the facts need to drive these decisions, not financial interests, not who owns real estate, who is making the money off of this. It's what is happening to our island if we allow unfettered, purely commercial short-term rentals. I just came back from the Nantucket Civic League meeting, and someone talked about the traffic with the Department of Public Works gentleman. It is increasingly horrific, to use a technical term. I mean, the line of traffic everywhere is unprecedented, and that's just going to increase. And so we have to have compromises. Not everyone gets everything they want. And I am, again, asking you vehemently to please collect data to inform your decision-making. I also spoke today with the gentleman who is the president of the Mattocket Conservation Association. They agree with this. They would like there to be data on this issue. I also spoke with Andy Reinhardt of the Brant Point Association. They would like data on this. And Brant Point is another association that has, I think he represented today, it is mainly seasonal residents or non-voting taxpayers. And so to find out what you should be voting on, you need to find out what other the non-voting taxpayers think, not just the 7 or 8 of you who are participating today. Thank you.
Thank you. What could be very useful, Francie, is for you or your group to actually draft a definition, because as I understand it, you have one issue, a very simple issue, and that is purely commercial. That there should not be purely commercial short-term rental properties in your neighborhood, and then you would say in the whole island. And so I don't think that any of us here understand how you would define purely commercial and how that would be enforced. And I take it the flip side of purely commercial is the definition of what is not purely commercial. So for example, could you, as a seasonal resident, who actually uses your house on a regular basis, and your primary purpose probably was as your own residence, could you rent your place as a short-term rental and not fall into that purely commercial definition? If you could, work around that, I think it'd be very helpful to us and to developing a consensus around a position that might well. I can't predict because we haven't discussed that issue in the past, but I think that it's the burning question that you're really raising.
I think it's one of them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I would.
But if there are others, you haven't raised them yet.
No, that's the one that we hold on and that we're talking about. You're quite right. We'd be happy to do that. I mean, because there's no use my just trading anecdotal information with you. Although, since you asked that one question, if my home I own here in Monomoy, if I rented it for short-term purposes, if I was here or not here, that would not run afoul of purely commercial because I'm here, I own it, and I'm here some of the time. In fact, a lot of the time. Yeah. But I see your point, and of course we will do that. But then, if I may, Peter, ask you, will you please poll the other? One way to do it is there are 25, I think, of the civic associations on the island. Ask them to poll their constituency on this issue, their non-voting taxpayer constituency. My hunch is that most of them would gladly do that. And we can present you with the questions we asked so that you could give them to the various associations who have also asked me for that information. I really think I hope we're all on the same page, or we should be, when you need to compile data to have meaningful input. Because I think from what I hear around the island from non-voting taxpayers and voting taxpayers is that too often what they hear people when they take a position at town meeting, they fear they are taking it out of their own, they're taking that position because of their own personal self-interest and their profit making, rather than looking at what the good of the island is. And that is something that I know you all should not be wanting to do. I don't think you do want to do that. And I don't know what conceivable, I don't know what argument you could muster to say, no, we don't want to obtain the information about what non-voting taxpayers think. I think you would be saying, we're delighted to get that information. We want that information.
Peter,
I think there's a premise here, Francie, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we haven't gathered data. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we have not polled, as you say, but I'm very anxious to see your questions because it's all in the definition, as Peter Halley just mentioned. So it's going to be interesting to know exactly, when you ask somebody, are they for or against commercial short-term rentals? I don't know what, I probably am, but I don't know how you define. I want to know what the definition is. Second, our meetings are open, and we've had many discussions about this, okay? And we've had members of the public like yourself attend these meetings. It's not like we haven't heard from anybody, believe us. I mean, believe me, we haven't heard from you before, but we've heard from a lot of people. And I'm happy to, we'll certainly consider having a properly drawn up, clear questionnaire if people want to have it, but this is not something that we haven't been open to. In other words, this is not a bunch of 4 or 5 people sitting around making all the decisions here. You need to understand that, whether it's on this issue or any other issue, by the way.
Well, okay, so number one, absolutely, we will provide you with, I think I've already sent you, Peter, the survey itself, which has, but that's the whole survey.
I received the survey at 5:30 this morning, and I have not looked at it yet. I've looked at the Monomoy plan and it is very impressive, and I plan to distribute it to the members of our committee.
Okay.
And
Well,
where the survey is mentioned, and it puts it into a context. And that's what made it easy
Right.
for me to zone in on exactly what you are interested in.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we,
I appreciate that. Now, to whom, you have two Peters, so I'm now talking to you, Mr. Chair. How would you like me to just send you the questions we suggest, or the definition, I think is what you asked?
definition, yeah.
Just send it to you and you-
This is what you would like. You would like somebody, whenever this committee is constituted, you would like somebody to put forth this idea. And it may be that everybody has the same idea. I don't know. But when I look at the words, I pretty much understand what it is you're aimed at. But I think that a precise definition, because it's ambiguous, there's an ambiguity there that would be nice to eliminate. And so this is not kind of like a make work. It's a really, it's sincere, what the heck is it that that could be turned into a rule or regulation that somebody would be able to enforce, and that somebody else could not easily walk around. And that's that's my interest. And as we've discussed at this meeting, this is going to be an iterative process with us. And my sense at the end of the day is that with whatever survey you've done and other people have done and the information we've got over time here, that once one could agree on a definition and look at, in a 360-degree way, enforceability, whatever, that we might be able to come to some consensus about that. But I don't know, because we're at the beginning of a process rather than at the end of a process. So, so where to send this? I think the best way to do it would be to send it to Kathy, who is our secretary. Peter is our vice chair, and then Kathy could distribute this, and it could be, actually part of a future agenda to discuss this issue in the context of this whole bigger question.
And I think, Francie, just to provide some assistance here and background, I don't know if you've gone through the process with all the town, and what they were trying to do was there was an extreme amount of difficulty, getting it through town council to find a definition. So they looked very hard to find a definition of commercial, and it got really, really hard because what is it? If it's in an LLC, does that mean it's commercial? Well, no, many people put their homes in an LLC and it just belongs to a family. But that's technically a corporation. So is that commercial? What is the definition of a homeowner occupied residence? How many days do you need to spend in that residence? So if your definition could include all those things, then that can be worked with. And I think there's also a really hard definition between what you can put in a zoning regulation and what you can put in a general bylaw. So that's, if you can separate those. So 39 is a general bylaw. That's where the regulations will most likely go. 42 is just purely zoning, and you can't in a zoning regulation say who owns a property. You can't do that. So that's a reason there were two articles. So if you have any legal help for you, anybody who you can refer to, that would be helpful to get a definition, because nobody was able to come up with one that would work. And that's why, because I've never heard anybody come up to me and say, oh, I'm all for commercial short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. I've never heard anybody say that.
Well, I haven't either, but except I'm sure if I were Copley Group, I would be saying it, because they're a perfect example of a purely commercial short.
Right.
And I would say, and again, this is just anecdotal because your questions are very good, and that, Kathy, was really helpful to me. You're making the distinction between general bylaws versus zoning, very helpful. But let's say I owned the house at 32 Monomoy. Mine is 5 Salt Marsh Road. That's Copley Group owns 32 Monomoy. But let's take them off of it. Say I owned 32 Monomoy. All I did was rent it out for short-term rental and got the benefit of that. And it was in my name, Francie Nealon. That would be purely commercial short-term rental. So in our view, it has nothing to do necessarily with the title owner of the property. Is it a corporation, is it an LLC, or is it an individual or a partnership? It has to do with how it is used and the purpose for which it is used. But your other question, Kathy, is also good about there's a way of gaming that system. I know about, okay, well, I'm Mr. Copley. He's a very nice man. I'm going to go stay there one day a year. So it can say it's owner occupied. No, that wouldn't qualify. So, but I get it. Your questions are good. We will submit that to you, Kathy, as Peter suggests. But three other things. One is about anybody can participate by Zoom meeting, but that is not the same as a survey. I would have been participating before, but I only recently found out about these meetings. I mean, your participation by definition, people like me, is only if they happen to know about the meetings. Not everyone does. I can guarantee you most of the non-voting taxpayers on Nantucket do not know about this, not because you're keeping it secret, just because they're not actively looking for it, okay? So your feedback is not in any way going to be equivalent to the type of feedback you would get through methodical surveying of the non-voting taxpayer constituency.
Can you share how we would know who to contact for a survey?
Well, here's one way. I'm sure there are many ways, but one way is what I mentioned before. There are 25 associations as part of the Nantucket Civic League. They have a list of their membership. They will know who their non-voting taxpayers are and aren't. We do.
We don't. And Tom Nevers.
You could send it to all of them in Tom Nevers and ask only those who are non-voting taxpayers to respond.
Okay, we already did. We
Well,
sent it to everybody.
Then that would be great. Then you have.
Let me just cut in here. I think for what the discussion we're having today is probably something that needs to be happening once you have, figured out the wording that you would think is appropriate. We're not going to decide any of this today. You brought up a good point, and we are open. Indeed, I think it's one of the many critical points that needs to be addressed in what the town will eventually do in this area. I think one also, just as you're doing it, keep in mind that you have residents who actually are voters, and whatever is proposed will either be thumbs up or thumbs down by the voters. And so the proposals have to be something that is not just something that non-voting taxpayers want. It's something that the actual voters are likely to approve. It's sort of a double filter. At the end of the day, the real survey, the real data will be how people vote at the town meeting. I think we've gone as far as we can today on this subject, and we have a plan to address it. Yeah.
Could I just break in? The cheapest and most extensive way to do a survey is by an insert in the tax collector's mailing, typically in January, earlier in the year. And you have to get permission. It has to be fair and balanced. But the toughest thing is what are the questions?
Yeah, exactly, Bill.
If you waited to January, then you wouldn't have any meaningful data from this group on this until for months. And I mean, really, we spent very little money, virtually no money on our survey. So, and we'd be happy to share all of how we did it and how.
Yeah, the challenges are how to contact people. Did you, email? Did you mail them? Do you have addresses? That information is only available if the people provide it to you. So you're not going to get everybody. That's the hard part.
No survey gets everybody. You can just do your best. And we did it by email. No, you would never survey anything if you thought you would get everybody.
Okay,
but the information does not have emails.
I'm going to,
Well,
this is my
yours
gavel.
doesn't,
My voice is my
Kathy,
gavel.
but others do.
This is not going to get decided today.
Right.
This is, we have a plan to move forward.
Okay.
And I think Bill has a good idea of something we may investigate. I think we would welcome how you went about doing your survey and understanding the costs of doing that. This is a town committee that has, our budget is a beautiful zero. And so to finance a survey would be an issue that we would need select board approval for and an appropriation. I'm very wary of going out to 35 or however many community associations there are. I have a feeling, Francie, that yours is probably one of the better organized and most active currently, and maybe that will change when you lose interest. But that's a sort of an invitation to start herding cats, which is something I've never found very profitable.
We're happy to help.
At the end of the day, it's going to be the voters, not the non-residents. It's going to be the residents who will decide this issue.
But then, wait a minute. Just one other thing on that. I don't quite, of course, that's how it's decided, but the whole purpose of this working group is to get views from all sorts of people, not just town voters. If it was just town voters, they wouldn't ask for you all to submit a representative. So
They probably would. They probably would, because they've been asking for our views for over 30 years, and they accept them and they reject them. But anyway, this particular part of the conversation is at an end, and I appreciate your participation. And I think we'll look forward to getting further information. We'll distribute the information you've already sent to this group. And I think what we probably ought to do is figure out how to post it on our website so that anybody who's interested can see this, because I think that's a very good work that you've all done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Thank you for letting us speak, or me speak. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. So is there hopefully we'll have the traffic planner next meeting, and we'll make our selections next meeting. Is there anybody else who has anything they would like to bring up? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I think, Bill, did you have something that you wanted to say about some stuff on the agenda that we could remove? Bill Sherman?
Sorry,
Okay.
no, I'm all set, just writing to you. Thank you.
Okay, but I don't have the power to do that, so I thought we should discuss, if you wanted to say things, we don't need them on the agenda anymore, that we ought to discuss that, because I don't just take things off unless Peter says so.
Up to your chairman.
Yeah.
Peter. Thank you. We ought to close the meeting.
Okay.
Late.
I was going to say something to Stephen. The fact that he's trained in nuclear, I said, this is an opportunity. Maybe Nantucket doesn't need a third cable. We can set up as one of those small mini nuclear plants and save the cost of running a new cable under the ocean. I figured I wouldn't ask him to do that. A motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Second,
Move.
Second? Do I hear a second?
yes,
Second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. It looks like everybody is in favor. Okay, thank you all. See you on the 20th.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.